Hey, what's up, guys? Okay, so this is the applied group theory lecture about. This topic we're gonna to cover is the second video about this group action. Okay, so now previously we proved that the orbits. So let me just write down orbit S. The number is basically G divided by GS. This is the stabilizer, which is G belongs to G and GS equals to S. Okay, so now we are gonna to introduce the most interesting object, or the so-called class formula. Okay, so this is S, right? And so if I start with S, at least S will generate its orbit. So let's say OS1, and maybe S2 here will generate some orbit OS2, OS3, keep going. So S can be written as a disjoint union of different orbits. And this is called disjoint union. So meaning that these two sets has no overlap. Okay, hopefully this is easy, obviously to see. So one thing I can quickly prove is the following: is that if there's one element which overlap, then two orbit will merge. So what I'm saying is that suppose there are an element here, let's call S, let's call S1 and S2 here. If let's say if OS1 intersection OS2 with some elements, let's say suppose there's an element S, right, in OS1 and OS2, then these two orbit will exactly be the same. And the proof is very simple. So we just by definition, right? So so element in OS1 is written by some GS1, and right. But okay, maybe let me do this. So maybe let me see. Let's say this. So let's say OS1 and OS2 they have common element S. So what this tells me is that let's say OS1 is all the elements G where start from S1. Okay, but since S is in, right, so I can write a GS, so G belongs to G. So this means that I have S1 and S can connect to G. Connect by some G, and every element can be connected from S. Okay, but how about OS2? So OS2 is the same. OS2 is a GS2, G belongs to G, and also connected by G, by S. So indeed that if OS1 and OS2 they have some common object S, then every element in OS1 can be connected through S, and every element in OS2 can be connected through S. But so they must be the same. So they are the same. Okay. So this must be the disjoint union. Okay, so now we have the counting formula. S will be the summation of G divided by stabilizer, because each OS is this. The OS is right, yeah. So this is the results. Okay, so these are general formula. These are very abstract. You can apply this formula on G when group action acting on any set S. Okay, but sometimes we are interested in some weird for some interesting case. Okay. Okay, so one example is that this is very famous. You just very important. You just take S to be G, and you acting on G by G using GH and a GH G inverse. This is called conjugation. Okay, so obviously it's a group action, and so that's right. So in this case, when we say GH are conjugate, so G conjugate to H, or they are conjugate if there exists maybe alpha or X, in G such that G is X inverse. Basically, they are connected by some X. In linear algebra, they are basically say, for example, they are connected by some unitary. This is called similar transformation. Yeah, okay. So so what about identity? So obviously that if H is identity, then G must be identity, right? So identity is a single conjugacy class. So right, so for each, so sometimes we define CG to be all the element H, where H can be written as X inverse. This is called the conjugacy class. Conjugacy class. So the group element G, so that the whole set S here, replaced by G, can be written as the different conjugacy class. Different conjugacy class. And there are a single one, which is identity plus CG greater than or equal to 2 CG. Okay, these are important formula called the class formula. Okay, so oh, by the way, okay, this is incorrect. So CG greater or equal to 2, but there will be some CG also greater than there will be some CG which is equals to 1. Okay, so maybe I forget about this. Let me just do it again. Sorry, I did some stupid mistake. So G is written as a conjugacy class. CG, but I can written as a CG equals to 1 conjugacy class plus some different classes with CG greater or equal to 2. Okay, so what's the CG equals to 1 case? Meaning that there's CG equals to 1, meaning that for that G, for every different H, right? Every H, for CG is defined to be H, which H can be written as XG X inverse. But suppose there's only one element here. Okay, so meaning that this H must be G, because it must conjugate itself, right? So which means, but this means that for every X, XG X inverse must be G, which is XGGX for every G. For every X. So this tells you that these elements are this X, right? This X must commute with all G. This G must commute with all X. So this is exactly the center. So these terms is just the number of centers. The cardinality of center plus CG greater or equal to 2 CG. So this is a class formula. Basically, each element in the center, they are conjugacy class. There itself is a conjugacy class. Okay, so now let's study the this format is very interesting. Okay, but let's say one particular applications. I want to do application. So we know that when the order of G is prime, then G is cyclic. This is a trivial proof using the Lagrange theorem. And now I want to prove that if G is a prime square, then G is abelian. So abelian meaning that every two elements commute. I prove. And this is very simple. So okay. Right, so if I write a p squared equals to zg plus summation of zg greater or equal to 2 g, right? But this is g divided by something, divided by the gs. Okay, so which means that so this guy is p squared, right? P squared. So how about gs, right? So obviously that gs is definitely less than p squared. Sorry. So since this element is greater or equal to 2, right? So gs cannot be 1. GS cannot be 1 because if so. Okay. So let me just. So first, the gs cannot be 1. Because if GS equals to 1, then there's already P squared, but this guy is greater or equal to 1, right? Because identity commute with everything. So GS cannot be 1. So each GS must greater than 1. Okay. And moreover, this GS cannot be P squared. Cannot be P squared. Because I say CG greater or equal to 2, right? So G divided by GS at least greater or equal to 2. So GS is at least G divided by 2, right? So GS is either is greater than 1 and less than P squared. So which means that this guy is P squared divided by something. So in particular, this guy is divisible by P. Right? Because, I mean, GS is a subgroup of G. So GS is either like something, 1P or P squared, right? But cannot be 1 and P squared, so it must be P. So GS is some P. It's basically vector, basically P. So this guy, the total of these guys must be divisible by P. Okay, so which means that now you have P squared plus ZG plus something which is divisible by P. Right? But this proves that, so this proves the following. This proves that the center cannot be trivial. If center is 1, which is contradiction. Because if center is 1, that means that there is some guy. Then 1 plus something divisible by P cannot be P squared. So center cannot be trivial. Okay, so from here that we know that center of G is non-trivial. Okay, but center is a subgroup of G. Center is a subgroup of G. And G is order P squared. So which tell you that either ZG is, so the center is either cannot be trivial, right? So the order of center is either P or P squared. Okay, if ZG is P squared, then everything is commute, right? So then G is RBA. So this is the first case. So what about ZG is prime? Okay, and I claim this is impossible. Impossible. The reason is very simple. Suppose ZG is indeed P squared, indeed P. I can take some, let's say I take some G, which is outside the center. And I take a ZG generated with G. Okay, so this is the subgroup generated by the ZG center and the G. Indeed, this is larger than ZG because this is G is not in ZG, right? But this is order P, and this is greater than P, so it must be whole group. So G is a P squared because there's no non-trivial subgroup here, right? Because this is P squared. So this show that G. This should be G. So G should be CCG G. Sorry, the Z G. Or maybe maybe let me use this. Let me use this. So I take a G outside of the center. Now I ask what's the Z. What's the ZG? So ZG is the everything commute with G. And this is indeed greater than center. Because G commute with itself, right? So G in this but not in center. But ZG is also a subgroup. So it must be a subgroup of G, but G is prime squared. So ZG must be the same as G. But then it says that everything commutes with G. Contradiction. Because this shows that ZG is in the center. Contradiction with this construction. So this is impossible. So everything is P squared. So G is RB. So this is somehow like the interesting proof. Moreover, actually give you a more general statement. it shows the following. If G is the order of prime, this is called P group. If G is a P group, then center cannot be center is non-trivial. Okay, this is proved by the previous proof. Right? If this is P to the n, then center cannot be trivial. And indeed, I think this shows that. Let me check. This actually gives you a strong result. This shows that the center cannot be Pn minus 1, I think. Because if center is Pn minus 1, then I can do the same proof. Right? I can take some G where outside the G minus Cg and then consider every element commute with Cg, which will force, by the order argument, will force it to be G. So this shows that these two stronger results, Zg is not identity and Zg is P minus 1. Okay, and finally, I want to say that this is somehow tight. Basically, you can consider so there is a group which is P cube, but abelian. That's about non-abelian. This is called Heisenberg group. By just taking all the diagonals and x, y, and z, and you say x, y, and z are z mod pz. So you just consider every element which is modulo p, and you can compute the center. I think the center is the following. Center is 1, 1, 1, something, something here. So the center is isomorphic to z mod pz. So you can say that you can see the center is p, but not p squared. Okay, so this is the proof or the application of this class formula.